Welcome to the Water Book Club, an online book club in a time of drought and doubts in nature for aquaphiles. Today with me is Amanda Tuke. Would you like to introduce yourself, Amanda?
Yeah, so as Jenny said, I'm Amanda Tuke. I'm a urban naturalist and writer, and my particular interests are plants and birds, but basically I'm interested in anything you can find in urban environments, and we're in a wonderful place today, which I don't know at all.
Yeah, Stoke-On-Trent, which I know a little bit about, but we're going to go and have a walk and have a look around and talk about your new book as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Jenny, I've just written and had published my first book, which is called Wild Pavements, Exploring Britain's Cities as an Urban Naturalist.
A brilliant book filled with amazing information. And I want to say as well, actually, if anyone is just starting out to go an urban hunt, yeah. I like that you put nature hunting in your book. I like that you use the word hunting. I think it's the best one to start with, actually. I think everything that I would have wanted to know in every single chapter, I was like, this is very well done.
Well, I'm delighted you feel like this. I mean, what it's trying to do is to inspire people with the idea of urban nature. What it won't do is help you identify everything. But I do, at the end of the book, I come up with some suggestions of where you can go to find more information and field guides, which would be a good idea to have.
Yeah.
But there's, even if it just makes people think, I could just walk down my street and see what's growing there.
Yeah.
Then I would be very happy that had happened. But while we're here, this is one of the plants that I write about in the book. So this is called Oxford ragwort. It's a really interesting plant because despite its name, it's actually native to the slopes of Mount Etna in Sicily. So it's a Mediterranean plant that survives really well on very dry, sort of open habitats, as you'd expect to find on the side of a volcano. But yeah, so how did it get here? Well, the Oxford is a clue. So it was brought to the Oxford Botanic Gardens in the 1700s by a plant collector. And then it promptly hopped over the garden fence and started spreading along the walls of Oxford, the old city walls. And then about 100 years later, it had got as far as the railway station, and that was at the time that the network was expanding all over Britain. And it started being whisked along the rail network, so that now it's you can find it pretty much all over the UK, and you still often see it on the rail network. I noticed it as the train was coming into Stoke-On-Trent, but it's also spread into the urban areas beyond the networks itself. But I love this. It's like the perfect traveller, isn't it? It's like proper traveller, and has made basically piggybacked on us. So I guess what it's finding here is something that's not that different from its native environment. I.e., cracks in rocks. Even on the rail network, the ballast that they use around the lines itself, that often is volcanic. So there's a sort of irony that it's found its own volcanic environment in the British Isles. But and it's a very cheery thing, and it's pretty much in flower all year round in some places. So again, it's a kind of vital source of nectar for insects. It probably doesn't have as many herbivores that eat it as our native common ragwort, and that isn't, so more recently introduced plants tend to not be quite so brilliant as a food source, but it's been here quite a long time, and so there will be things that, because it's closely related, and
that explains why it might be here, actually, because we're on the lock. So obviously the railway network follows all the old canals.
Absolutely.
So imagine it's just drifted down quite easily and thought this might be a volcano.
something like that. But what a lovely, cheery little, daisy it is. So, but very recognised. Many people recognise common ragwort. But this is just a close relative that's in some ways better suited to the urban environment than our common ragwort is.
Yeah, that's Oxford ragwort.
Oxford ragwort, absolutely, and called that because of the Oxford Botanic Gardens.
Yeah, so there you are. Might be a good time to ask, what does water mean to you?
So in terms of enjoying urban environments, so much life is around the water. So that means a lot to me. So as I said, if I visit a new city, go down to the down to the river. There's some more of our cuckoo flower. A much smaller one than the one that's going on there. Look. So I'll go down to the water. It's great for birds. Often good, bits of wild strips where wild plants can get a root hold. But even if there's not any, even if you're somewhere where urban water is distant from where you are, there's something amazing about you can have that really dry pavement, a brand new pavement. It's just been laid. It's absolutely, there's not a plant in sight, and they'll have little cracks, and you think, how on earth could anything live here?
Yeah.
And then come back after a year, and there'll be mosses.
Sorry.
We've got a wren singing behind us. There's mosses. The tiny plants called pearlworts often get a little root hold.
Yeah.
So they're surviving on the absolute minimum of moisture.
Yeah.
But once they've grown there, then a little bit more moisture is held in that sort of little micro environment. And then bigger plants can start growing because they've got a little bit more. And in no time at all, the plants themselves have changed that environment and made it much more, sort of attractive to water and hold the water. And once you've got that, in no time at all, if you left it, the pavements would be covered with plants.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting we want that necessarily, because then nobody could walk down them. But there's no reason in a road why you can't. I always think you could, not to have plants growing along by the wall or along the road edge. Doesn't do any harm. In the same way here, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's quite good then, having a verge, like that.
Absolutely. So you need a little strip. That's all it takes. And it doesn't stop people cycling, and as we see, cycling and walking down here.
Is there like a best path then that you could have plants in them, like a cobble path?
I get excited about those proper old cobbles or old bricks.
Black ones.
I mean, basically, the more cracks there are, the better.
Okay,
so the least plant-friendly ones are the really big paving stones.
Okay, yeah.
But somewhere where some of the sort of older style pavements, and they do still get put in sometimes now, don't they? Are really exciting, because then you get all lots of opportunity for little plants.
And they can coexist. Then people can still roll over them because they're smooth.
Yeah.
And they don't have to grow very tall. I guess you can have smaller plants.
Exactly. So I was in Shaftesbury in Dorset. On the very famous Gold Hill, which is the one that was used in the Hovis advert. So most people recognise that picture. And I'd never been there before, but what's lovely is because it's a really old hill, so it's all cobbles. And so all these other people are looking at the landscape, and I've got my face like this, next to this, thinking, it's just so exciting about it. So I had a lovely time there.
Well, that's great though. Like I wouldn't think to go down a cobble street and to look at all the in between, but now you've said it, maybe it'll make it even more interesting, historic from like a people point of view, but also maybe a plant point of view. You've got a little tail.
And again, it's plants taking advantage of an environment that we have created. Just straight in there, no messing about, just straight in there.
They don't have a border.
Absolutely, basically. No borders.
And actually, that's here, Amanda.
So this is the plant that appears on my book. In fact, so it's really saxifrage, and it's something that I keep finding everywhere in all different urban areas. And it's slightly distracted. I thought there was a buzzard. But so it's a tiny little plant which you'd normally find in its kind of natural habitat. It would be like on limestone, sort of limestone pavements. But it's popped up in cities, and so it's now all over the British Isles, finding little places like this. But it's a gorgeous little thing. Look at it. It's so sweet little white flower, and it has the leaves have sort of three fingers, which is how you can spot it. And it has it's almost succulent, isn't it? So it's pretty good at coping without much water. I've just you pop the seeds of this one, which is a bittercress. But they fired, and that's rather fun.
So where does it originally come from then? Is it a native plant?
So it's a native plant, but I'm not sure. I think it's fairly recent into cities, and there's a theory by some botanists in London that it's become resistant to herbicides. So in areas where lots of glyphosate has been sprayed on clean pavements, it's one of the first things that pops back. So I'm not sure we've got the scientific evidence yet, but it's an interesting theory. And
the plants are rising, basically.
Absolutely, they're fighting back. They're fighting back, and it just makes that point, doesn't it? That even in cities, there's also all those kind of interesting ecology questions get explored. But just in sort of at a micro level.
Definitely.
So when we know that herbicide resistance is a massive problem in terms of agriculture and whatever, and this is just another example of what happens if you keep using the same herbicide.
And does it have any particular benefits to the environment then?
The plant?
Yeah.
Well, I think even in an area like this that we're looking at, where there's not very much greenery, but if we went and looked closely at things, we'll find probably some invertebrates are using those plants. Any plant, even including the Rulus saxifrage, provides a tiny little habitat.
Tiny little house.
Exactly. And then invertebrates will be there, and so the more vegetation you have, the more invertebrates you have, the more birds you will have, the more mammals you will have, the more reptiles and amphibians you will have. So plants are the basis of most ecosystems. So and that's why they're so important.
And do you find it most along canals like this, or just anywhere?
That plant?
Yeah.
Anywhere. So city streets, you can find it right in the centre of London, away from water. But yeah, canal paths are quite good for things like this though, because obviously in the same way that cars kind of whisk seeds down roads, and you often get plants that spread down roads, I suspect a bit of canal boat does that as well. So it's creating a little bit of turbulence.
That must be true,
Absolutely. Seem impossible, but what I always encourage people to do, and I write about this a lot in the book, is start very local. So what are the wild plants that are growing in your garden? Because you can keep going back to them. So you can say, when the little shoot comes up, this is what it looks like. Now it's flowering. Now I can see what the flower looks like. You can use plant guides to try and work out what they are. So if you start with that community of plants, either in your garden, or if you don't have a garden, in the street, or in a local park, but keep it small, and then it feels more manageable. And that's the beauty of urban plant hunting, is that you can make it small and manageable like that, so it doesn't feel too overwhelming.
And then you can watch the whole life cycle, like you say.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have a street or a garden, you can always go down to the pub, I guess.
You could, because you'll find them anywhere. So that's the bad thing. When I come to a new city, what I tend to do is very much what we've done today, is come down to the water. I'll find the main river. But that's a really good place to, you go to a city you don't know, it's a really good place to start looking. So.
And you say that in your book, I think you say one of the best ways to start is to know the name of your nearest water, which I thought was quite poetic. Like, it's kind of, where are you from? And people, I think in ancient times, people would name their waters.
And obviously people who live in London, they know the name of the Thames, but they don't necessarily know the tributaries. So they might have one of the Thames tributaries running past the house, don't even know what it's called. And I find that heartbreaking. And I feel you're much more likely to care about it if it's a thing that has a name.
Definitely,
And that applies equally to your river, the street trees, the plants, the animals. That you're much more likely to care about them if you know what they're called, because then they start taking on a sort of identity.
Definitely.
But definitely applies to rivers too.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question, actually, Amanda, which is, having been an urban naturalist, how has that changed your view of the flow of water through life and botany and birds?
Well, I suppose what it has done is it's made me sort of hyper aware of where it is. As I was saying, it's that sense of cities are all different things depending on where you are in life and your background. And so a city, when I first moved to live in London, the city for me was a place that was I knew where the nightclubs were. I was young, free and single, so that was my city. It was where the cool places for young people were to hang out. then later on I have children. Now I know where all the playgrounds are and where the nearest toilets are, and so you get that different view of the city. Once you start looking at urban nature, then you see the city differently again. So now I'm interested in all the little places where plants haven't been cleared out, where there is water. So you start being aware of water, and it's kind of how key that is to finding interesting things in cities. So your city map then is completely different, isn't it? So then it's it'll be if I'm walking along the River Pool, which is got a long-tailed tit up there. The River Pool, which is one of the tributaries that eventually makes its way into the Thames, that's near me. So when I go down to the supermarket, there's a great big hypermarket. Behind it is the River Pool. So I will sneak around there and have a little look to see what's going on, see what birds are there. And rare birds have turned up there in the past. So you're just much more conscious of how critical it is to life and everything. I think in a way that perhaps when I was a mum with kids, I'm not thinking about in quite that same way. So I just think you look at it differently, and once you've started noticing where the water is, and being interested in underground rivers and all that kind of thing, you don't forget that stuff. So I'm walking along sometimes in a nearby cemetery, and there's a little marker on the thing which says the River Effra flows under here. And I love that. I love the fact that it's and that somebody has got their act together to put this sign in. Absolutely. But so it changes your view irreversibly. I think once you've locked into that, then you start becoming very aware of it.
I find that fascinating as well, the underwater, underground, water in London as a whole.
Yeah,
I don't know.
cool,
I think I'd like to go tunneling down there.
I think you should, and people do, don't they? So, and you can go and do tours, I think, and people have written about them, and you can see where they come out on the wall of the Thames, But it's definitely worth doing, I'm sure.
Well, completely changed then, I guess. In your when you were speaking, I was thinking you started off with your watering hole as a teen, and then maybe you went to the family
I like that.
where you got changed nappies.
Well, we probably fed the ducks as well in the park, exactly. So water features, but you're just not thinking about it in the same way. I think about it being about life.
Yeah, it's like a full circle event once you've gone and seen where the plants are being watered and everything.
And also you become aware, of course, you're looking at the water and you're thinking, why has that got, and I'm not talking about this water, but why has that water got that kind of scummy surface on it? And so again, it
might be lucky and find that today.
Well, we might. But there's that sort of sense of how good is this water? And of course, at the time that I was becoming an urban naturalist was when all the stories about raw sewage being released, which I'd lived in the city for a long time and had no idea that raw sewage was released into the Thames, and that was an absolute eye-opener.
I didn't know, actually. I obviously know about it now, but when I read your book, I did not know that it was that much into the Thames, even though I'd watched all the things for it, because obviously I must have been thinking of paying attention to all the local stuff of the water, but when you actually put that there, I think I kind of got like, wow, that is so much, just the numeral, and in the middle of the book you have a moment where you stand up because you're getting so frustrated at a meeting about water pollution.
So it was a really interesting meeting because it was at the zoo, the Zoological Society of London, who run a project, or they run lots of projects to do with water. The one that I had been volunteering on was around eel monitoring. So there's a site in the sort of Upper Thames, sort of around Ham, that area, where there's a eel trap, and we would go there, check the trap, release the eels, count the eels, measure them, etc., etc. But when I went to this, and then they invited all the volunteers from that project, and also from a project that are called outfall safaris, which was a new concept to me. So we go to this meeting, and it was very heartwarming. There's all these amazing people who give up their time, and they weren't, there were people of all ages and walks of life give up their time because they care about water in lots of different forms. And we're sitting there, and they're talking about the outfall safaris, which are basically people monitoring the local sewage outfall on their water body, and about how many times it releases, how often they go past and they see it releasing.
And they call it safari, which is
And
kind of
To
amusing.
be fair, that and that's I understand that, because that's ZSL trying to stop it sounding too grim. And so you're hearing about all these volunteer hours put into monitoring this. And Thames Water were there at the event. And to be fair, the Thames Water team are the people who, when there's a crisis, they were the ones who rush out. And they were looking at, however, there was hardly any of them, and they have to manage the whole of the Thames Basin in terms of incidents. So you're looking at this and you're thinking, and I'm thinking, why is it such a tiny team? Why is it this whole thing is dependent on volunteer hours? Surely that's what Thames Water should be doing. It just seemed ridiculous. And at the time, while I was in the meeting, I looked up the bonus that the chief exec at the time had just received for Thames Water. So when I did finally get the nerve to stand up and say something, I just said, I have just read that this person has received this bonus this year, and yet what we're hearing from you is you don't have the resources to actually monitor all of it and to do something about it. And it just became, and everyone was sort of hushed, silent, because it slightly changed the atmosphere, as you can imagine. But people came up to me in the breaks that I'm so, even somebody from the zoo came up and said, we're very glad that you said that, because we would find it difficult to. So
I think the change in the atmosphere was that you released them of their frustration. Probably they were all having a moment of thoughts where you're all collectively together without realising it, and you're the one that said them out loud.
It's tricky, because
what would be your advice, if you've got any other than Freedom of Information Acts, of what people can do straight away to kind of look after their water? If it's just monitoring it and maybe going to people with freedom of information, would you say that's one of the first things you could do?
You could, although I suspect for most water bodies there will be groups around them. So our local river has a volunteer group who go and do clearing out, and they'll do river fly monitoring, where they do that thing where they kick the stones and then count the flies and whatever, and which gives you a real sense of the health of a water body. So you don't have to do it on your own. I think the thing is to try and find out who's already doing it. If you can volunteer some time, then that's fab. Or if you can promote the idea of it, or just tell them they're doing a great job. Because sometimes that's what as I visit cities in the UK, I find these amazing people who often are completely unappreciated and use their own time to go and look after urban nature in all its forms, whether it's kittiwakes in Newcastle or toads in South London, and most of them do it completely unthanked. So if nothing else, we can just say thank you, because there's so many people. That's what we have the advantage of in urban areas, isn't it? Is the number of possible people who can protect nature.
That's so true. I think gratitude is a key thing as well. It's just saying, if you see someone in your vicinity looking after it, maybe just say thank you next time you see them. That could be the number one thing.
Well, that's easy and free, isn't it?
Exactly.
And hopefully makes you feel good, makes them feel good, and it'd be really nice.
And then you can ask them what they're doing. You can help them.
Absolutely. That's the sort of next stage. But so I think it's just noticing, and that applies to nature as well, doesn't it? Half of it is, going to be very boring here and say, take out your earplugs, put your phone away, and just walk down a riverbank, or large fish, doing a little jump out of there, walk down a road or a riverbank and just listen and look. And honestly, I think it will completely change how you see a city street that you might walk down every day.
On quite often on
So this is a liverwort. So it's a very I hate the word primitive, but effectively it's a plant that evolved much earlier than flowering plants. So it doesn't flower, it has spores. So a bit like mosses, and so mosses and liverworts tend to get grouped together. But it's like some mosses, and certainly like ferns, it needs quite a lot of moisture. So you'll find it in places where moisture collects. So very happy on walls. Quite often when the spore cases here, they can be very beautiful. Some of them can shape like little umbrellas.
Oh,
so again, it's a thing that's worth getting your hand lens out and having a look.
Definitely have to get my lens out. Go into the drive the boat. I love this. Okay. Oh.
This is rather lovely, isn't it?
Lots of goodies.
And it's amazing how things manage to survive on the side of that, isn't it? So cemeteries can be really good as urban plant hunting places. The best cemeteries are ones where there's a sort of mix of management going on. So what we're looking at here is quite a uniform length of grass. So what will happen is, as the season goes on, the biggest, toughest grasses will grow up high. Any smaller plants will get shaded out. And over time, if that just kept happening, you'll end up with very few plants in it. So the ideal thing in terms of management to increase biodiversity here would be to have some areas that are kept very short, some areas that kind of grubbed around a bit, so they've got a bit of bare ground, some bits that are long. So in general, in terms of if you want more biodiversity in urban habitats, it's that kind of fine grained mosaic means that you get the most amount of different plants. If you have most diversity of plants, again, most diversity of invertebrates, etc., etc. So there's lots of, I can see lots of interesting things here. There's a plant here that's again feels very seasonal. There's a whole patch of it over here. So this is called, it's actually a rush, but it's called Good Friday grass, is one of the common names of it. So it usually comes out around Easter. So it's a sort of, that's a relative of grasses, rushes. But yeah, it has quite distinctive because it has very hairy leaves, so you can see, which you wouldn't normally notice on the grass. And that's this is what, this is just a little clump of flowers, and that's as much as it comes out. But once you start noticing it, you notice there's a big patch there, and look, there's a big patch over there. So you kind of get your eye in.
Yeah. And it's so beautiful that as well, isn't it? You have the little colour of...
Yeah. And it's tempting, so as a botanist, one of my big interests is grasses. And it's hard not to be interested in grasses if you're a botanist, because they're so, they are the most important plant family. They feed us, people build houses out of them, bamboo, etc. So they couldn't be more important. And yet most people don't realise there's more than one sort of grass. And I remember having a conversation with somebody who said, but what sort of grass is grass? And I said, what do you mean by grass? And she said, like in my lawn. And of course, even in your lawn, there might be 3 different, turf grass often has 3 or 4 different species. But we've got a lovely, this is one of the early flowering grasses here. So this is, what is it called? I can think of the Latin name, but I'll be curious. Oh, meadow foxtail. So it has a sort of soft foxtail-like flowering head.
Yeah, they're quite silvery in the sunlight.
Absolutely.
As well.
And there's another one here. So this is sweet vernal grass, which is supposed to be scented, but looks so superficially quite similar kind of top. But this one kind of spiky looking, and it often has the little anthers, little stigmas, whatever they are. Those are the anthers, the brownish ones, and these are the female parts sticking out. But yeah, so even in your local cemetery, you could start thinking, oh, I wonder how many different grass heads I could find. And then you do realise that they don't all look the same, in fact.
No.
So,
how many endemic grasses are there to the UK? Do you know?
A horrible question. Though. I think it's about 200 and something.
I think it's a good answer. 200 and something.
It's of that order of and again, in your local area, 20 grasses maybe.
Yeah.
And they don't. And the great thing about so this sweet vernal grass, as its name implies, vernal is spring. So it flowers in the spring and then it's gone later in the year.
Yeah.
So the wonderful thing about studying plants is that they'll a lot of them have very set times that they start appearing, and so you can. It's not that you've got to learn all 20 in one go. You can think when the first one flowers, I'll have a look. Yeah. And it's hard to identify grass without the flowering head. So but so there's a sort of, again, we talked about seasons before, and that, how that you can even get your sort of appreciate seasons even if you live in a very built up area. Yeah. Just by what's coming into flower on your verge, or you know, along the station or the railway station, or so you can still get that sense of seasonal change, which is, I think, very important.
Just by looking at grass.
Just by looking at grass, or just plants that are coming into flower.
And I did notice that in your book, you kind of begin with this season now. So I think I mentioned this earlier. I thought that was great because straight away in the first chapter, it was stuff that I'd been noticing that week, the mining bees. And did you do that on purpose, or was it just accidental?
I think
the season
it was sort of accidental in that you know, the when the book's published and when the narrative of the book starts. But I suppose there are some things that are kind of, you know, many nature writing books are published in spring. You know, that publishers often be excited about them then, so that's not that surprising. And in terms of planning a sort of a whole set of journeys, there's something about it, isn't there? You know, sometimes winter's a time for kind of regrouping and planning and thinking, and then it's fun to think, right, now I need to get out, I can see things growing, I need to get out and see them. And so I guess it's not that surprising that those two things sort of worked out like that. But and I think for other people new to it, people do notice, you know, that trees are in blossom, don't they? And the cherry's out, or their apple tree is flowering, or whatever. So maybe that is the time to try and hook people in.
Yeah, I think
get excited about. There's our first goal.
Just Amanda demonstrating her great eyesight there as well.
So that's a lesser black-backed gull. So in urban areas, I suppose what I've tried to get across in the book is that there's not one sort of gull. So people will often say, and I have no problem with people calling them seagulls. Yeah. But there's often you'll see more than one sort. Yeah. And the great thing about gulls is they're quite recognisably different. Once you sort of worked out that the three common ones are black-headed gulls, or three common urban ones, black-headed gulls, lesser black-backed gulls, and herring gulls. It's most likely what you're going to see in a city. Occasionally you see rarer things, but those would be the most common. Yeah. And they're great as birds because they're very visible. You're not going to have to, you know, poke around in a bush trying to see what this bird looks like. So they're there, they're visible. They often sit on roofs, so you have a chance to look at them. Yeah. And if you do look at them, rather like the dandelion, they are incredibly beautiful. And I still marvel that you get these birds that live in very gritty urban areas and they are snowy white. Yeah. How do they do that? You know, you think about dogs, you know, hilarious if you have a white dog in a city or that goes in water or whatever. But they're so beautiful close up. And they're fascinating birds. They're clever birds. You know, I've seen a herring gull stalk somebody walking along a pavement in Cardiff where, you know, he was walking along eating a sandwich and the herring gull is probably about a metre from him running along the wall behind him, just hoping, you know, and just watching that. He didn't even know the gull was there. We were standing there on the other side of the road just thinking, he doesn't even know what's happening, does he? But they're very clever. They're also very sensitive to human behaviour. So there's lots of evidence, I talk about this in the book, there's evidence that they're very aware if you look straight at them, they don't like that. So, and that's one of the things that you're advised to do. If you're feeling threatened by a gull, you have to look at it straight in its eye. Oh, really? And they get very spooked by that.
So when you're at the chippy, you need to look at them in the eye.
I think that's the thing to do. So again, it's being aware of them, isn't it? Yeah. So
I've noticed that they are quite sidelong birds. That is the way to be around them because they do that the same with you.
And bear in mind that because they don't have binocular vision, so they can only look at you with one eye or the other. Yeah. Broadly. So But I think they're much more. Every year we have this thing, don't we? Of gulls did this, gulls did that, and it's almost like certain newspapers, they're just trying to fish out a story, and then there'll be some council will say, oh yes, we should get rid of gulls, and I think, how much damage do they do really? It's unbelievable, and yet they're beautiful birds who live alongside us, and I think could be appreciated more, and just how amazing they are.
I love how cheeky they are. That's how I see them. Like a little bit, like you say, he's stalking the person, and it's a bit cheeky. So you shouldn't anthropomorphize animals too much. But I feel like I don't know how people don't see themselves in gulls, because they act quite similar to humans. Humans are quite opportunistic, really. Sounds like an awful thing to say, but we are. That's why we survive.
We're clever.
Yeah,
it's clever survival skills, isn't it?
Exactly.
And that's what you're in that behaviour in gulls, as you see it with crows and the crow family.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing. You're seeing cleverness, and it's interesting because the birds that people think are clever, owls, for example, or birds of prey, probably dim as anything because they've got such big eye sockets.
Yeah.
There's very little room. Canada geese, very little room for any brain.
Yeah.
So their brains are usually tiny, and if you're a bird of prey, if you're a top predator, you don't need to do anything apart from, it moves, kill it. That's the sort of, it's a very simple algorithm. So owls, I'm afraid, not very clever. Birds of prey, also not very clever. Whereas, and I think this is one of the questions that you had asked me, that crows can recognise people's faces. So there's been past evidence that if you treat crows badly, and I mean they did this sort of ethically and scientifically, but crows will remember the face of someone who in their minds treated them badly. So beware. Treat your crows well, and again, I mean, so those are the birds that I find interesting. The crows are amazing, and the crow family are just amazing.
I love the crow family. I was going to say, actually, the person who asked the question said, is it beneficial basically to have positive relationships with them? Because I think he's actively saying hello to his local hawks, maybe. I have to remember the bird. I think he's in America,
right?
And so he says that he feels that they recognise him because they let him quite close, I think, to the nests.
I suspect they're habituated to. I'd be surprised if hawks recognise people. I don't, I love a bird of prey too, but
but if it was a crow,
that would be much more believable. I suspect that. I mean, urban birds of prey are much more habituated to people. So in urban areas, you can get quite close to a kestrel before it will fly off.
Yeah.
I don't think that's because it recognises me. I think it just has learned that humans are mostly not much to worry about.
Well, I forget the author now, the person who wrote the Peregrine. But in the Peregrine, I think he notes that essentially one of the best ways to go and see birds of prey is to become regular.
It's J.A. Baker, isn't it?
I think that's it. Yeah. So he probably lets you go near it because you're not doing anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Because they just don't worry about you.
Yeah.
Not necessarily recognition, I guess.
But, it's just, and whether that's a good. I mean, it's debatable, isn't it, about whether that's a good thing to do. I mean, in terms of our relationship with the natural world, there is a temptation for people to see it very much as, what can the natural world do for me? I'd be, maybe we need to reshift that and think, what ought we to be doing for the natural world, not what can I get from it.
Yeah.
It's lovely that it helps people heal and all of that, but it shouldn't be about that. I don't think.
Yeah.
So I don't know, something about seeing it as for its intrinsic beauty. It was there before. Most of the natural world was there before humans, and it will be there after humans.
Yeah.
And we can see ourselves as stewards rather than gardeners and shepherds, and so and I suppose that's where all the issues around feeding birds, planting wildflowers. To me, that's gardening wildlife and nature.
Okay. Yeah.
Or farming it, even farming nature, which feels wrong. I don't, and it's not necessary. So, we've just there's the news from the RSPB having re-looked at their policy about bird feeding and saying that they don't think people should feed birds in the summer. Of course, it's being very contentious. And it's a brave thing for them to do. They make quite a lot of money out selling bird food. But there's evidence that it can actually depress numbers of some of the rarer species of birds who can't take advantage of the feeding. Whereas our common garden and bird feeder birds like blue tits and great tits and round us great spotted woodpeckers all do really well out of it. But then so they've got massively elevated populations, and some of the rarer birds like willow tits and marsh tits, there's increasing evidence that the numbers of blue tits and great tits are so they're competing with them and winning and pushing the rarer birds out.
Spreading diseases as well.
And that's even
I love your focus of pigeons and gulls. There was something quite feral about it. Quite like the word feral at the moment, because obviously they're coming away from domestication. But I think it's important maybe to think of ourselves as a little feral when we get to know nature a bit better, because we can't segregate ourselves from domestication, because we are what that word means. And I think it's a good thing to keep in mind, like you say, to not become gardeners of nature, and also to admire those animals that we've put in the exact same position as ourselves, really, as gulls and pigeons. And I was wondering, is that the main reason that you put them in there, kind of
but it's
an
partly
emblem
because
of the urban bird?
I mean, they're highly visible. Gulls and pigeons, highly visible in urban areas. Our relationship with them can be quite fraught. So it feels like kind of tackling that head on. And I went into it thinking, I'm sure I've got a lot to learn. And that was exactly how it turned out. I mean, one of the slightly mind-blowing things for me as an ecologist by background was learning that when I went to the Natural History Museum's ornithological bird department out in Tring, was that everybody thinks that Charles Darwin sort of developed his theory of evolution by natural selection by looking at, the thing that's always trotted out is he went to the Galapagos and he saw these different finches on different islands that had all filled different niches, and that's what led him to come to this theory. What we now know is that wasn't the case at all, and at the time he didn't put two and two together. It wasn't until some time afterwards he kind of realised what he'd been seeing. It was actually his experiments breeding pigeons that helped him understand that. So, but Darwin's finches and Darwin's pigeons doesn't have quite that same, so you can see, and you still see that trotted out all the time now. When Darwin was in the Galapagos, and just think, we have to challenge things like that and go, that wasn't what happened. And it might help people appreciate pigeons for, what they are. I mean, the kind of sad thing, the thing that is sad, and it goes back to this gardening wildlife, is that if we actively feed pigeons, as some people do, even in areas where it's effectively banned, all that does is, so I think people think, they're starving, we have to feed them because they're starving, and then that each individual pigeon will be better off. But that isn't what happens. What happens is they just have more babies. So then there's just a bigger population. They're all still starving to the same level, you just have more of them. So, and then that's when you get the conflict, because then we've got more and more and more, causing mess, etc., etc. So again, we should be able to live alongside them, but we don't have to do anything to them. Do you see what I mean? So I mean, we can help not cause harm, and the sort of damage that they get to their feet is because of the rubbish that we leave on streets, probably. And certainly there are amazing people who catch pigeons and untangle the often human hair that twine from their feet. So I can see undoing that damage is a good thing to do, but I wouldn't
feed the birds.
I wouldn't feed. I'm
Mary
afraid
Poppins has lied to us all.
Well, it's a lovely idea, but it's for us, not for them. I think that we have to accept that it makes us feel good, but it doesn't do them any good.
It makes sense as well, because as a concept, the feral pigeons are feral because obviously we had our own pigeons and then we took them out, and they're the ones that have survived because they're savvy enough to pick out of bins and things. And basically people feed them because they feel bad. In that same concept, you want to give someone fresh food rather than giving it out of a bin. And maybe you're treating that wrong, whereas actually they could be part of our whole ecosystem. You know, they're technically cleaning up after us a little bit, you know. Exactly. If we could have better food and everything, that's a whole other issue.
As the gulls do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just doesn't work if you intervene like that and feed them. It honestly doesn't achieve what you're trying to do. But I don't, and the idea that, and this is as I understand it, the issue that the RSPB had was, people feed birds and they feed them in their gardens, and that is their way of connecting with nature. So if we take away that thing, I still think people will find ways of connecting with nature.
Definitely. I mean, planting a relevant tree maybe rather than putting a bird feeder. That could be
exactly, or growing sunflower seeds, or growing plants that will naturally provide food in winter. So there's lots of much less problematic things that you could do in your garden, but generally caring for the urban spaces would do. And we spend, as a country, we spend £250 million a year on bird food. Imagine if that was channeled into habitat restoration and protection. It could have vastly more and much more positive impact.
On volunteering time as well.
Exactly. So if we can try and persuade people, and it's hard to say that it would make you feel positive if you knew it was hurting the animal that you think you're helping. So I'm afraid once that genie is out of the kettle, jug, whatever it is, then it would be very hard to put it back in, won't it? So.
I can't think what a genie comes out of now.
What do they come out? Lamps.
Kettle was a good word for it. That's great, Amanda, actually. So what's next for you, Amanda?
So the book's been out since the 5th of March, and I've already done some events relating to it, but I'm kicking off my bookshop-based events this week with a lovely independent bookshop in Ashton in Surrey, where I'm going to do some talking about it, and so I'm really looking forward to that. And then I'm basically we're trying to fit in as many towns and cities across the UK. So if people want me to come, just get in touch, and I'm sure we can, if you've got a lovely local bookshop you think might be interested. So it's been fun because we found lots of really interesting independent bookshops. So for example, there's one in Edinburgh that's only been open less than a year, called Wild Fungarium.
Oh, nice.
And it's a specialist nature and wildlife bookshop. And so got in touch with them, and they seemed excited about the idea. So I'm going to take people for a walk, and then back to the shop, and then have the kind of shop-based sort of more typical traditional book event there too. So that's been great.
People can go in the bookshop, and then you can be me. You can be with Amanda, and you can be guided before getting your
I'd love
book.
that. So there's nothing more fun than showing people, ideally their own city, but just helping them see it in a different way. So it'd be great fun.
And you're also going to be on the Country File.
So I'm on the we'll be on the Country File podcast series. So we're recording that the week after next. I don't know when it'll come out, but I'm really looking forward to that. So it's opened up. I mean, this is what I've discovered as a writer who'd previously only really done features. It's opened lots of doors that and publications who, I found it hard to get any kind of traction with. And particularly, for example, gardening publications. So at the moment I'm writing a feature for a gardening magazine. Which I don't think I would have been able to do if I didn't have the book. That's what's made them interested, is that idea. So I'm really, so it's all those kind of new things. It's a great adventure.
And that's on top of your regular birds
column. So I still have a column in Birdwatching magazine that is the most amount of fun. So, and often when I was writing the book, I would dovetail the two things together. So for example, I go to Liverpool to meet my friend Jen Jones, and we do pavement plant hunting and talk about soil, because that's her. She's a fab soil scientist.
I thought that was a great chapter. That was actually.
But it was such fun, and she again, so she opened my eyes to the importance of soil, and I was thinking, you know, as a botanist, I ought to know that, but I didn't. But yeah, while I'm there, I also wrote a feature about birds, and so I try and do that in as many places as I can, sort of combine the two things. So
birds and botany.
Birds and botany, and everything else. It's more that I'm not so familiar with invertebrates and I suppose mammals reasonably good at, but I might struggle if you just presented me with a small rodent and said, "What's this?" Water voles, I can do.
Water voles,
I can definitely do water voles.
Took me a minute the other day though, because I was just like, "How about its tail was?"
You do have to check, don't you, that you've not just got a lovely common garden rat.
So Amanda, is there anyone who's particularly inspired you in your writing?
Well, lots of people, but I was thinking about when I was considering this in advance of our chat, who most related to water has inspired me. And I came across this book, so I looked through my bookshelf, and this is a book that I have returned to many, many, many times. So Waterlog by Roger Deakins, which was published at the end of the 20th century. So I think it was first published in 1999. And why I love this book, and why it is that I keep going back to it, is the writing in it is absolutely beautiful. But it's also a lovely combination of sort of observational writing and sort of more lyrical writing. So it's a really good balance. If somebody's writing is just completely poetic, I struggle with that. So I like the way that he weaves those two things together, and it's the way he writes is very much in the present. And I always, in my writing, I always try and achieve that thing of so that the reader feels like that they're standing alongside you, seeing and hearing and smelling and touching what you're touching, seeing, hearing, smelling. And that's always the objective, to try and get that so people can be there with you. So that's why I love his stuff. And I mean, what a groundbreaking book it was.
It is a good book.
So even now I go back to it. And you know, and it was just again, it's looking at a landscape in a different way. In what he was trying to do was to look at it effectively travelling through via water bodies. So that was brilliant. But I love it. So if anybody's not read it, I think everybody should read this book. Sort of fundamental classic of nature writing. Nice. And yeah, absolutely. Is that begin to show itself? Ooh, it's a wren. So it's a little wren arguing with us. Perhaps not keen on Roger Deakins, but anyway. So so I learned a lot from in terms of making that jump from short form writing, feature length writing, to writing books. I've went back to all my favourite nature writing books, and you know, analytically looked at how do they construct a 5,000 word chapter so that it flows. How do you so I had to had no experience of writing whole books before, so I had to go back to first principles, and so I looked at my fabulous mentor's books, Stephen Moss's books, because I think he does it brilliantly. But yeah, lots of other people as well. But the thing that helped with writing the book was, in some ways, it wrote itself, because what it's doing is it's chronicling my travels and adventures and the conversations I had with people. So in some ways that made it a lot easier. So and that's really what, reading the book, that's what you're going to get. You're going to be visiting different cities with me. You're going to hopefully see what I saw and heard through my eyes. And it doesn't matter if you don't go to those cities. It's not a travel book. It's not go to Liverpool and walk in my steps, but it hopefully will show people how visiting an urban area, how can you experience it differently from how you might have done previously. So.
I think I can really see, actually, now you've said it, I can really see Roger Deacon in your book. He's quite humorous as well, I think.
Yeah,
often at times.
he doesn't take himself very seriously, which I really like. I find kind of po-faced nature writers a bit of a yawn. I won't mention any names, but yeah. So there's something about some light and shade, a bit of humour, because clearly, I mean, we've talked about different environmental issues as we've walked, but you know, it can be very gloomy, and if that's what you don't want to send the reader away with, that sense of this is all hopeless, everything's awful. So what I hope I've tried to do is to suggest, you know, if you do want to do something about it, this is what you could do, and there is hope because there are amazing people out there already doing amazing things, and it's just about connecting up with them maybe and appreciating them and thanking them, as we said before.
Well, thank you, because you've been doing amazing things. You can see it in your book. We've done so many things. I was thinking it, you know, your knowledge and your teaching, and you can really see that in the book. You know, you've obviously taught people botany. You talk about it at the end. You have a placement, I think, in London somewhere.
I ran a workshop for beginner botanists, so which was all based on pavement plants. So that was the idea, is that I'd have 2 hours with them, and an hour of that we'd be out hunting for plants, bring them back into the classroom, and then work out how you tell what they are and what we can learn from them. And it was lovely. It was a really nice mixture of people. So the kind of people who come, you know, to my pavement plant walks are, you know, sometimes they're gardeners, sometimes they have allotments, sometimes they know absolutely nothing about plants, or they say they don't, and then most of them have recognised a dandelion. So that's where we start with that thing of, you know, let's start with what you know and let's build on that. So but it's so good for me, because, you know, I might be a relatively knowledgeable botanist, but there's loads of things I don't know. So it's a learning journey for me, and there's nothing more rewarding than learning through sharing your knowledge with other people. It means you had to go back and think, God, well, why do I think that's true? Go back and find out where that came from. So and that's just fun.
And the world is wide, so you can't know all of the botany.
Well, we'll never run out of things to learn about botany or anything else. And so and they're always finding out new things now. So you know, there's plenty that's not been worked out. So it's just I can't think of a nicer thing to spend the rest of my life doing.
And also, because you mentioned keeping in that present tense, and I was thinking that, like, I'm very much with you along the journey. And you put the kind of, for me, I love the little thoughts that you had, because I think that's what it's like to be on a walk. Obviously, I have ADHD. I've mentioned it on the podcast before, and I probably have a lot of thoughts on a walk that will go pinging off at the same time. But it's quite nice to be out with people who like nature. For instance, we just paused for the wren, because you're allowed to just pay attention to those impulses. And I like that you did that in the book. Did you do it consciously, was it, or did you just kind of, that's just your personality, your little comments that you have, kind of, oh, who's that over there? Or,
well, I suppose some of it is because I'm very aware that I talk to myself if I'm on my own. And I was thinking, so sometimes I talk to myself and sometimes it's just the thoughts. And I thought, I like the idea of getting it in there. I was also aware that some readers might not like it that much. So I thought I won't overdo it. One reviewer said it was a bit of a manic pixie dream girl vibe.
Really?
I was quite pleased about that.
I like that.
At what age do you stop being called a manic pixie dream girl? I wonder.
I think that's a high compliment.
I thought so.
You're also a musician, so that's obviously your new solo artist name.
Absolutely. So no, I was quite chuffed about that. So that was quite fun. But yeah, I can see people might see some of the things that I spend my time doing as quite eccentric, but I mean, Britain's brilliant for eccentricity, isn't it? We're very tolerant. I mean, you know, Roger Deacon would have entirely got that, wouldn't he? He's, you know, we're very tolerant of eccentrics. That's one of the wonderful things about British culture, and to be celebrated, I think.
I think so. I mean, Roger Deacon is mainly. I think I remember the first time I came across this book, it was sold to me because someone said, it's just an old guy who likes to swim and he just went out in ponds around Britain, and I was like, oh yes,
that's me. I'm there. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how old he is in there, but I was just like, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I think they put it. He just went out one morning and started going swimming in ponds. So yeah, I think the quirkier the better. I think British people definitely appreciate that, and people appreciate it about us. I hope anyway. But I think they do. That's certainly our comedies that we sell seem to be
Are quirky,
that.
aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have an extract or anything you wanted to read?
If that was okay.
Yeah.
This is a very short little taster. The evening was warm and tender, and after the party I took a long swim in the pool below Buscott Lock, in what Morris, i.e. William Morris, used to call the Baby Thames, upstream from Kelmscott. The river is still quite a modest affair up here on the borders of Oxfordshire, and the water was clear enough just above the lock to see the dark shapes of tench weaving lazily among the lily stalks. I entered the water down a steep bank, slithering over a well-worn muddy chute in the grass, the sort of thing known to opponents of wild swimming as bank erosion. This was obviously a popular bathing place. Swimming in a big circle round the pool, I was observed by several swans and surrounded by tall, untidy old crack willows. These were the very trees that inspired Morris on his daily fishing trips aboard his punt to design his willow boughs wallpaper. I wondered what he would have made of the assortment of big, ugly notices proclaiming the danger of deep water. A smell of fish and duckweed hung in the air. So I think captures that sort of the messiness of the natural world and the humour. Absolutely.
I like that he says that the swans witness him. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Water Book Club with me, your host, Jem Ratcliffe, and author Amanda Tuke, talking about her book, Wild Pavements, here on Stoke-On-Trent Canals, as we tried some plant hunting together. If you enjoyed this episode, why not check out the other interviews, or click subscribe to receive new episodes straight to your inbox for free. Substack subscribers can also access live author interviews and ask questions during the sessions. If you want to support the Water Book Club, you can buy me a cuppa or subscribe to Premium. Premium subscribers gain exclusive offers. I hope to meet you next time at the water. Go with the flow.